New York City has a reputation for being one of the most expensive places on the planet to spend even a single afternoon. A cocktail here can easily run you $20. A basic breakfast at the wrong spot can disappear half your daily budget before 9 in the morning. People come here expecting to bleed money at every corner, and honestly, if you do not know where to look, that is exactly what happens. So today, I am putting that reputation to the test. I have exactly 24 hours in the city, and exactly $50 in my pocket. No more than that. Can you actually survive a full day here, see the best of Manhattan, eat well, and come away feeling like you experienced the real city, all without blowing through your budget? Let's find out. Morning. The classic breakfast and a free cathedral of marble. Rule number 1 of doing New York on a budget. Skip the fancy brunch spots entirely. Those places exist to separate tourists from their money with avocado toast and a 30-minute wait. Instead, walk into any local corner bodega. There are thousands of them scattered across this city, open at all hours, and every single one of them serves the city's unofficial fuel, a classic bacon, egg, and cheese on a toasted roll, wrapped in foil and handed to you in under 2 minutes. Paired with a hot coffee, the whole thing costs about $6. There is something almost ceremonial about eating one of these. The roll is slightly crisp on the outside, the egg is soft, the bacon adds just enough salt, and the cheese holds the whole thing together in a way that feels engineered by decades of trial and error. New Yorkers eat these standing up, walking, talking on the phone, doing 3 things at once, and somehow it never gets in the way. We take ours over to Grand Central Terminal and eat it sitting on the steps outside, watching the city move past at full speed. Then we walk inside, and this is where the morning really earns its place in the day. Looking up at that iconic green astronomical ceiling, painted with constellations, lit from behind, stretching out across the entire main concourse, costs absolutely nothing. It is one of the most photographed interiors in the entire country, and somehow it still manages to make you stop walking the first time you actually look up, instead of rushing through toward the next train. Total spent so far, $6, and we have already eaten well and stood inside one of the most beautiful rooms in New York. Midday. The free cruise that beats every paid tour. From Midtown, we head south, walking straight through the towering canyons of the financial district. The buildings here get taller, and the streets get narrower the further south you go until you eventually pass the Charging Bull statue surrounded by tourists taking photos, and arrive at Whitehall Terminal at the very southern tip of Manhattan. Here is the move that almost nobody outside the city actually knows about. Forget the $50 tourist boat cruises that promise you a view of the Statue of Liberty from a distance through a crowd of selfie sticks. Real New Yorkers know the actual hack, and it is sitting right there in plain sight. The Staten Island Ferry. It runs 24 hours a day, every single day of the year, and it is completely free. No ticket, no booking, no line to speak of. You just walk on board like you are commuting, because for thousands of people, that is exactly what this boat is. As it pulls away from the dock and crosses the harbor, the Statue of Liberty comes into view close enough that you can actually make out the details on her face, not just a green speck in the distance the way most paid tours show her to you. The downtown skyline rises up behind you at the same time, all glass and steel catching the midday light. The round trip takes about 50 minutes, and it remains, without exaggeration, one of the best views in the entire city. Total spent on this entire stretch of the day, still $0. Afternoon. Chinatown dumplings and an elevated walk through the sky. Once we are back on land, we head straight into Chinatown for lunch, and this is where the city's food scene really starts to show off. The streets here are loud and alive. Hanging ducks in restaurant windows, fruit stands spilling out onto the sidewalk, the smell of frying oil and steamed buns drifting out from a dozen open doorways at once. We find a spot called North Dumpling on Essex Street, and we order what might honestly be the single best value meal in the entire city. 10 freshly pan-fried pork and chive dumplings, crisp on the bottom, juicy inside, drizzled with chili oil, for $4.50. 10 dumplings. Under $5. It is the kind of meal that makes you wonder how any restaurant in Midtown justifies charging $30 for an appetizer that does a fraction of what this plate does. To walk off lunch, we head west toward the High Line. If you have not been before, the High Line is an old elevated freight train track that has been converted into a long, narrow public park, stretching for over a mile above the streets of the west side. Walking through it puts you eye level with the second and third floors of buildings on either side surrounded by carefully planted greenery, with the sound of traffic far enough below that it almost fades into background noise. You get a completely different perspective on the city up here, somewhere between a park and a piece of public art, and it costs absolutely nothing to walk the entire length of it. Running total after lunch, $10.50. Evening. Central Park at golden hour and the slice that started it all. As the afternoon begins to fade and the light turns gold, we make our way to Central Park. There is a particular kind of magic that happens here in the hour or two before sunset. We walk past Bethesda Fountain, where street performers are almost always set up playing jazz, the brass instruments catching the light, a small crowd gathered loosely around them, nobody in a hurry to be anywhere else. The trees are lit from the side instead of above, long shadows stretching across the path, joggers and cyclists moving past in both directions. This is the New York that exists in movies, except it is real and it costs nothing to walk through. For dinner, there is exactly one correct decision to make, and that is pizza. We head to Joe's Pizza, a legendary institution that has been serving the same simple, perfect cheese slice for generations. You order a slice, they hand it to you on a thin paper plate, and there is an unspoken rule that you fold it in half lengthwise before eating it standing up at the counter or out on the sidewalk. The cheese stretches dramatically with the first bite. The crust underneath is thin and slightly charred at the edges, and the whole thing costs $4. $4 for what might be one of the most iconic bites of food in the entire country. Running total now sits at $14.50. Night. The lights that never turn off. To finish out the 24 hours, there is only one place that makes sense as a closing stop: Times Square. It is loud, it is chaotic. There are mascots in questionable costumes trying to get you to take a photo for money, and somehow none of that takes away from the experience of standing in the middle of it at night, completely surrounded by towering screens lighting up the sky in every direction. It is sensory overload in the best possible way, and it is the kind of place everyone should experience at least once, regardless of how they feel about crowds. After taking it all in, we head to the subway to get back to where we are staying. New York's subway system now runs on something called Omni, which means you do not need to buy a physical transit card at all. You simply tap your phone or a contactless bank card directly at the turnstile, and the single fare gets deducted automatically. One ride back across town runs about $3.75, and just like that, our 24 hours in the city comes to a close. The final tally. So let's add it all up. We ate a classic bodega breakfast and looked up at a ceiling painted with constellations. We rode a free ferry past the Statue of Liberty with a better view than most paid tours offer. We ate 10 incredible dumplings for under $5 and walked an elevated park above the streets of Manhattan. We watched golden hour fall over Central Park and ate one of the most iconic pizza slices in the country. And we closed the night standing in the middle of Times Square before tapping our way home on the subway. Total spent for the entire day, $28.25. Out of the $50 I started with, I walked away with almost $22 still in my pocket. That is enough for breakfast again tomorrow, or just a cushion in case something unexpected comes up. New York City has a reputation for emptying wallets, and that reputation is not entirely wrong if you're not paying attention. But underneath the expensive cocktails and the $30 avocado toast, there is an entire version of this city built around free ferries, free parks, $4 pizza slices, and dumplings that cost less than a coffee back home. The free stuff here is not a consolation prize. The free stuff here is genuinely some of the best the city has to offer. New York on a budget is not just possible. It might actually be the best way to experience the real city, the way people who actually live here experience it every single day. If you want to see this same challenge taken on in another major city, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next adventure.